I'm Lena Morales, and the night before my birthday, my father, dead for 5 years, told me not to wear the dress my husband bought me. I woke up choking on my own breath, my throat tight like someone had pressed a hand against it. The room was dark except for the soft glow of the street lamp bleeding through the blinds, and for a moment I didn't know if I was still inside the dream or clawing my way out of it. I could still smell motor oil, the kind that used to cling to my father's jacket when he came home from the shop. I could still hear the crackling static of the old radio he never replaced, and I could still see him standing with his back turned, then shifting just enough to look at me with the same stern, protective expression he wore the day he taught me how to change a tire. He didn't raise his voice. He never needed to. He just said clear as if he were right beside me. "Don't wear that dress Ethan bought you." I sat up straight, heart punching against my ribs. My eyes went straight to the garment bag hanging on the closet door. Black. Glossy. Perfect. Ethan had brought it home 2 nights ago, said it was a birthday surprise, kissed my forehead, and told me he wanted to see me in it tomorrow night. I'd laughed then, soft and trusting, thinking it was sweet. Now in the dark, that same bag felt like a warning flare. Ethan slept beside me, turned away, breathing evenly. He looked peaceful, familiar, safe. But the echo of my father's voice wrapped around my spine, colder than the room, heavier than the dream. I didn't scream. I didn't shake him awake. I just stared at the dress he'd chosen for me and wondered why a man who wasn't alive anymore sounded more truthful than the one sharing my bed. Morning light spread pale across the ceiling, never quite warm. I lay still, watching shifting shadows, while Ethan showered down the hall. The sound of running water should have been ordinary, but after last night's dream, it only tightened the knot in my chest. My father's voice, the way he turned toward me in that dusty garage. The warning clung to me no matter how I tried to explain it away. When Ethan came out, steam following him, he gave me that practiced smile. He asked how I slept. I lied and said fine. He didn't notice my cold hands or unsettled heartbeat, or maybe he chose not to. He kissed my cheek, mentioned an early meeting, and left me standing in the fading trace of his cologne. The house felt too quiet once he was gone. I waited for the coffee maker to finish the hum, replacing the small morning chatter he used to offer traffic clients gadgets he wanted to buy. He hadn't always been distant. When we first met, he made me feel seen, guiding me gently through crowded rooms, remembering tiny details. I mistook his attentiveness for depth, but over time his warmth shifted into something I couldn't name. He stopped meeting my eyes. His phone stayed face down. His smile looked rehearsed. Even standing close, I felt a wall between us. Still none of that explained the dream, why waking felt like my father was urging me away from something I hadn't yet recognized. As I sipped my coffee and glanced at the garment bag in the hallway mirror, a quiet, irreversible crack formed inside me. By evening, the dream had faded just enough for me to pretend it didn't mean anything. That was easier than admitting something in my life might be slipping beyond my control. Ethan came home later than usual, blaming traffic and a last-minute call. I nodded, pretending the edge in his voice didn't bother me. He set his phone down, face down as always, and loosened his tie with that carefully tired gesture that suggested honesty more than proved it. I told him dinner was ready. He kissed the top of my head, barely touching me, and we ate in a silence that felt heavier than usual. At some point I realized I couldn't remember the last time he'd asked about my work, or anything that wasn't purely practical. When he went to shower, I stayed at the sink washing the same plate long after it was clean. The water running down the hall stirred the same weight in me as the night before. I turned off the kitchen lights, and that's when his smartwatch lit up on the counter. I wasn't looking for anything, just noticing movement in the dim room. The message was bright enough to read without stepping closer. "Did she like the dress? I can't wait to see you take it off her." My breath caught. The words didn't make sense, not the way they were supposed to. I tried to twist them into something harmless, but the longer I stared, the colder the room felt. The message wasn't for me. And the dress? The same one from my father's warning. A sharp calm settled over me. I didn't touch the watch or search for more. I stepped back and let the screen fade into darkness. A few minutes later, Ethan's footsteps echoed in the hallway. I didn't turn. I didn't ask. I just whispered goodnight as he passed a soft, practiced sound that hid the storm gathering quietly beneath my ribs. The next morning, I woke with the same dull weight in my chest, but something had shifted. The message on Ethan's watch looped quietly in my mind, each word peeling back a layer of the life I thought I knew. I moved through the house gently, trying not to disturb the fragile illusion between us. Ethan made his coffee as usual, humming, looking so relaxed it felt practiced. He asked if I was excited for my birthday dinner. When I hesitated, he touched my back lightly, too lightly. "You'll wear the dress, right?" he asked, casual on the surface, expectant underneath. I said yes. His relief was too visible. After he left, the house fell silent again. I went to the bedroom and stared at the garment bag. Unzipping it just enough, I saw the sleek black fabric, nothing threatening at first glance. But the lining felt stiff, raised in a way that didn't belong. A memory flashed my father's warning, the dusty garage, the certainty in his voice. My stomach tightened. I didn't take the dress to the boutique Ethan suggested. Instead, I drove to a small alteration shop near my father's old neighborhood. The woman there, with silver-streaked hair and thoughtful eyes, examined the seams with practiced care. Then she paused. Her brows drew together. She picked up tiny scissors, opened a hidden stitch, and slid something out. A small black device no bigger than my thumb. Cold. Wrong. She placed it in my palm. "This wasn't part of the original dress," she said quietly. "Someone added it. Recently." My hand trembled, not from fear, but from the sudden icy clarity of what the device meant. Whatever Ethan had planned, this wasn't a gift. It was a setup. I drove home with the device in the center console, wrapped in the tissue the seamstress gave me. No matter how many turns I made, its weight felt heavier than anything I'd carried in years. By the time I reached the house, my heartbeat had settled into something steady. Not fear, not anger, but pure focus. I set the device on the kitchen table beside my laptop and watched it while the coffee brewed. It looked harmless, like a cheap gadget someone would forget in a drawer. But inside it was the truth about the man I lived with. And it wasn't just infidelity anymore. I logged into our joint bank account, something I rarely did since Ethan always claimed he had a system. This time, I scrolled slowly. Transfers I didn't recognize. Signatures meant to look like mine, but just slightly off. Payments to an unfamiliar downtown address. My pulse tightened as everything began to align in a way that made too much sense. I called Nora, my friend, the paralegal, and told her I needed advice for a friend. She didn't believe me. After I described the device, the dress, the bank activity, she went quiet, calculating. "If he's moving money and forging your name," she said, "he's building a version of events where you take the fall. Fraud, embezzlement, charges that could erase a life. I needed answers. Real ones." I traced the suspicious payments to that downtown address and apartment in a new luxury building. I slipped inside when someone exited the lobby, took the elevator to the 10th floor, and stopped at 10F. I knocked. A woman opened the door. Blonde hair in a loose tie, scrubs still on, kind but exhausted eyes. Not at all what I'd pictured. But she was the one Ethan had bought the dress for. "Are you Avery?" I asked. She nodded, confused, and I realized with a jolt of clarity that she knew even less than I did. Avery hesitated, still holding the door as if unsure whether to let me in or shut me out. I didn't blame her. I wouldn't trust a tense stranger either. But when I said my name and told her I needed to talk about Ethan, something in her expression shifted confusion, not guilt. She stepped aside. The apartment was warm and softly lit, a takeout box on the counter, nursing shoes by the door. It looked lived in, not by Ethan, but by someone trying to build a new life based on promises they believed. Avery offered me water, her voice unsteady, and we sat at her small kitchen table. When I placed the printed photo of my wedding between us, she froze. Her eyes widened, filling with shock, fingers tightening on the table's edge. "He told me you were divorced," she whispered. "That you were unstable. That you used to steal from him. He said he was helping you because he felt guilty." The lie hit harder than the affair. It matched the version of me Ethan had been quietly shaping, fragile, unreliable, easy to dismiss. I told Avery everything. The device in the dress, the transfers, the forged signature, the dream. She listened with both hands over her mouth, tears gathering. Tears. By the end, her shoulders shook. "I thought he loved me," she said. "He said we'd get a place together. He even talked about introducing me as his fiancée once things settled at work." The word fiancé landed like a bruise. I reached out, not touching her, but close enough. "You didn't know," I said. "And you're not his first lie. You're just the one who got close enough to see the cracks." She wiped her eyes, then drew a trembling breath that sounded like resolve. "What do you need from me?" she asked. and for the first time since the dream, the ground felt steady beneath my feet. I didn't answer Avery right away. Not because I didn't know what I needed, but because saying it out loud would make everything real in a way it hadn't been before. I unfolded the tissue in my bag and placed the small black device on the table. The sight of it seemed to drain the color from her face. "He put this in the lining of the dress he gave me," I said quietly. "He wanted me to wear it tomorrow night." Avery leaned closer, studying it, as if it might explain itself. When she looked back at me, her voice was barely a whisper. "That's not just a tracker. That looks like a mic." The confirmation hit harder than I expected. It wasn't the betrayal, it was the calculation behind it. I told her about the bank transfers, about Nora's warning, about the way Ethan kept positioning me as unstable, irresponsible, unpredictable. Every detail built a clearer picture of what he had been planning, and every piece made us both sit straighter, breathe slower, understand deeper. Avery got up, walked to a drawer, and returned with a manila folder. "He kept some things here," she said. I didn't think much of it, but now. Inside the folder were printouts, emails, schedules, notations, some highlighted, some annotated, all tied to his company's upcoming audit. One email thread caught my eye instantly, Ethan talking about moving certain funds before someone flags them. Another line referenced needing to make sure the household accounts look clean. He wasn't just preparing to leave me. He was preparing the story for why the missing money wasn't his fault. When I exhaled, the breath felt jagged. Avery's voice trembled, though not from fear this time. "Tell me what to do." I asked for copies. She nodded. We worked together for the next hour, printing, photographing, organizing. Not frantically, but methodically, like two people who finally understood the danger they'd been living next to. When I left her apartment, I had a folder tucked under my arm and a new steadiness in my step. The city lights reflected on the windshield as I drove, casting faint shadows across the dashboard, and for the first time in days, the silence didn't suffocate me. It sharpened me. Tomorrow night, I would invite Ethan to dinner at my father's old house. He thought he had everything under control. He thought I was predictable. But the truth was simple. I was done being the quiet piece on his board. I spent the next afternoon preparing the house the way my father used to, before family dinners, slowly, deliberately, as if the act itself steadied the air. The place still smelled faintly of cedar and old motor oil, a scent that had survived every season. I set the table with mismatched plates he'd collected from garage sales, opened a window to let the late-day breeze in, and waited for the sun to dip low enough that the kitchen filled with that soft amber light he loved. When Ethan arrived, he carried a bottle of wine and a smile polished enough to impress a boardroom. He stepped inside, hesitantly, glancing around like the walls made him uneasy. Maybe they did. He'd always said the house felt too sentimental, which was ironic, considering how easily he weaponized emotion when it suited him. He followed me into the dining room, and when he saw I wasn't wearing the dress, something flickered behind his eyes. Confusion first, then irritation tightening the edges of his jaw. He asked where it was trying to sound casual, but the strain in his tone gave him away. "I burned it," I said. The words landed exactly the way I wanted them to. His smile faltered before he forced it back into place. I reached into my bag and placed the plastic evidence pouch on the table. The device inside caught the light shining like a tiny metallic heartbeat. He started talking fast, excuses, explanations, little half smirks meant to disarm me. He said the device was for safety. Said I misunderstood the bank transfers, said Avery was confused, said I was letting my anxiety get the better of me. His voice kept rising and cracking until he finally ran out of lies to stack on top of each other. I told him the truth. That Avery knew everything. That Nora had already helped me prepare the documents. That Detective Harris had copies. And that whatever narrative he'd been crafting around me had already collapsed under the weight of his own fingerprints. Watching him realize he'd lost wasn't satisfying in the fiery, cinematic way people imagine. It was quieter. Like a balloon slowly leaking air. Like the sound of something hollow finally admitting it's empty. I walked out before he said another word, stepping into the cool night air, leaving him alone in the house of the man he could never outsmart. By morning, the process had begun. Accounts, frozen inquiries opened the polished surface of his life cracking in plain sight. As for me, I didn't feel triumphant. I felt free. The kind of freedom that comes when you finally choose yourself, even if it means burning the last thing someone tried to use to break you. And somewhere in that soft, steady quiet, I could almost hear my father's voice again, not warning this time, but proud.